Hey gang, I'm back. Kentucky Indians. New history of Kentucky. Circa 1997. It's not as new as one would, you know, think. Harrison and Klotter. So, Lord Dunmar's war was actually worse than what I had thought. When Lewis arrived at Point Pleasant, because Lewis is like the fucking British dude, Andrew Lewis. When he arrives at Point Pleasant in West Virginia at the mouth of the Kanawha, he was attacked by Cornstalk. You know, Cornstalk Ghost. It has a hex over West Virginia just like Chief Redbird and Chief Pluggy has a hex over Kentucky. Right? So, you have Cornstalk, the Shawnee chief, the capable principal chief of the Shawnee on October 10th, 1774. The warriors estimated at 300 to 1,100. Those who fought then usually selected the higher figure, waged a determined, skillful battle against the larger white army. They inflicted some 200 casualties, but Indian losses were also heavy. The Shawnee decided to make peace rather than wage a devastating war. Signed a treaty. Camp Charlotte. It was Cornstalk who signed a treaty, who eventually Cornstalk was killed in white people's hands. Lord Dunmar, the Virginian British, who Daniel Boone was loyal to. So you have lots of Indians here. He wants to say that there wasn't any Indians in Kentucky, and yet he writes all these different stories about Indian terrorism, right? They're defending their land, so actually the terrorists would be the occupiers, right? Anybody who terrorizes the population is a terrorist. William Tecumseh Sherman would be the terrorist, who is from Ohio. So, you know, that's great. Thanks, Ohio, for giving us him. You give us fucking William Howard Taft, too. The motherfucker couldn't get out of a bathtub. No wonder there's so much obesity in Ohio. So, Ohio, you guys. So, let me see. Indians. Lots of Indians. Dragon canoe, he said it'd be dark and bloody ground, right? And the treaty Sycamore Shoals. On April 1st, 1775, Daniel Boone wrote Henderson a letter and sent it by a special messenger. This is page 27. Just before daybreak on March 25th, Indians had fired on the camp, mortally wounding Captain William Twetty, killing his slave Sam, and seriously wounding Felix Walker. 3 days later, the Indians attacked an isolated hunting party and killed and scalped 2 men. Daniel Boone had called in all the detached parties there to meet at the mouth of the Otter River. Henderson wrote he almost wished the Indians would do his enterprise a favor. If they scalped a man a week, the others would keep working. So Henderson was in favor of Indian scalping. That fucking bastard, that fucking illegal fucking treaty-making son of a bitch. Fucking land speculator, Transylvania, creating motherfucker. In the years between the founding of the first settlements in Kentucky and the Battle of Fallen Timbers, fought in 1794 near present-day Toledo, Ohio, effectively ending the Indian danger in Kentucky, numerous stations sprang up as immigrants poured into the region. Life in a crowded fort where little privacy was possible often proved difficult even in peaceful times. Colonel William Fleming, a member of the Land Commission, visited Harrodsburg in 1780, the first settlement in Kentucky, and left a harrowing description of what he saw. He said the spring at this place is below the fort, and it's fed by the ponds above the fort, so that the whole dirt and filth of the fort putrefied flesh, dead dogs, horse, cow, hog, excrements, and human odor all wash into the spring, which with the ashes and sweepings of filthy cabins, the dirtiness of the people, steeping skins to dress and washing every sort of dirty rags and clothes in the spring, perfectly poisons the water and makes the most filthy, nauseous potation of the water imaginable, will certainly contribute to render the inhabitants of the place sickly. So yeah, Harrisburg was a disgusting fucking place. On Sunday afternoon, July 14th, 1776, same year that Chief Pluggy was murdered in Kentucky, in Georgetown, Kentucky, 13-year-old Jemima Boone and Elizabeth and Frances Calloway, ages 16 and 14, disobeyed orders and went canoeing on the Kentucky River. They were seized on the North Shore by a small band of Cherokee and Shawnee warriors. Cherokee and Shawnee working in conjunction together to kidnap Daniel Boone's kids. Daniel Boone, you've already lost 2 kids, like a nephew and a brother. You've lost like half your damn family just coming into Kentucky. The Indians don't want you here. So they take Jemima Boone and Elizabeth and Frances Calloway, all 3 of the young women, young girls. The girls made every effort to delay their progress and to leave signs of their passage. The pursuers found the trail hard to follow. Daniel Boone feared that they were losing ground. Then he rescues them and everybody's happy. So, the Shawnee Chief Cornstalk tried to preserve peace, but in the warrior culture, it's essential for a young man to attain full status through warfare. The whites who are intruding into traditional tribal lands offered a prime target. When Cornstalk and his son and other Indians were killed at Point Pleasant by a group of frontiersmen in 1777, Cornstalk's successor, Blackfish, who succeeded after Cornstalk, as well as others who wanted war, had proof that they needed. The whites cannot be trusted. They must be driven out the land. Lieutenant Governor Henry Hamilton at Detroit advised his government that parties of Indians conducted by proper leaders should be sent against American frontier settlements. He was known as the hair buyer. Lieutenant Governor Henry Hamilton would buy scalps of Kentucky frontiersmen by the Indians. The raids assumed a new dimension with Blackfish, 200 or more Shawnee across the Ohio River, and established a base near the crossing of the Licking River. From there, he sent out small parties to do what damage they could. On March 7, 1777, a male slave and his master was wounded as they worked in a field at Boonesboro. At about the same time, some settlers who were making maple sugar were attacked near Harrodsburg. Hugh McGarry and the search party, to see why the sugar makers were late, found the mutilated bodies of his stepson. And that's when he hacked the body into pieces and fed the pieces to his dog. The Shawnee attacked Boonesboro on the morning of April 24th and killed a man who'd gone outside the gate. Simon Kitten, standing by the gate, shot the Indian who waved the bloody scalp. Boone, Michael Stoner, and a dozen or so others rushed out in pursuit of the retreating warriors. Stoner fired and hit an Indian, but he was himself wounded twice. Several dozen Shawnee cut between their pursuers in the fort, and Boone yelled for the settlers to fight their way back to the fort. In the wild melee, a bullet smashed Boone's ankle, and he fell to the ground, barely conscious. Kitten shot the warrior about to scalp Boone, then smashed the skull of another with a rifle butt. He scooped up Boone and ran with him to the safety of the stockade. Later, from his bed, Boone paid Kitten a well-earned accolade. "Simon, you behaved like a man today. Indeed, you are a fine fellow." Simon Girty comes on the scene. Henry Hamilton had offered inducements for settlers to come to British forts, and he promised generous treatment for men who would fight for His Majesty King George III. Among those who joined the British were Matthew Elliot, Alexander McKee, and Simon Girty. Captured by the Seneca Indians. I don't know if it's a Seneca or Seneca. The Seneca Indians in 1756. Simon Girty, who was born in 1741, died 1818. So he had a long life. 60 or 70 years old. Was adopted into the tribe and lived with the Seneca for 3 years. It's for 7 or 8 years. You lying motherfucker. Klotter. Fucking Klotter. Quit lying to everybody. Indians are everywhere. You have it all over your book. Simon Girty was adopted into the Seneca tribe for 8 years after going over to the British in 1778. Simon Girty worked as a scout and an interpreter, participating in numerous raids. The great renegade was one of the mildest epithets Kentuckians applied to him. Simon Girty was supposed to have watched with approval the torturing of prisoners, particularly the prolonged death of Colonel William Crawford at the stake in 1782. On the other hand, Simon Girty occasionally saved prisoners from death, including Simon Kitten, whom he had served in Lord Dunmar's War. Simon Girty also shot at the Shawnee in Lord Dunmar's War. He was a scout for the Virginia militia. Lord Dunmar, who was the British fucking tyrant. The continued Indian incursions made it difficult for the Kentucky settlers to raise crops and to bring supplies into the settlements. While hunting on a cold, snowy February 7th, Daniel Boone was captured by several Shawnee, part of a 120-man war party led by Chief Blackfish, the successor of Cornstalk. The Shawnee would kill the salt makers, Blackfish told Boone, and then they would go on to wipe out his fort. So Daniel Boone made up some bullshit. They named him Big Turtle. Or Blue Jacket. No, maybe not. Blackfish adopts him. Maybe Blue Jacket was there or not. I don't know. Boone explained what he had done to warn a major Shawnee attack would be on its way. On the way back, they discovered that Blackfish with 400 warriors from several tribes and a company of British militiamen under the command of a Captain De Quinde were ahead of them. So they had to go back to Boonesboro. And this is when the longest siege, the siege of Fort Boonesboro, happened. 1778. 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. Blackfish accepted a truce in the meantime, but they didn't accept it, so they had to raid them. Much of the mutual taunting involved Pompey, a black interpreter for Blackfish, who was finally shot when he revealed himself to deliver another taunt. The Indians, Pompey, why the fuck did y'all kill Pompey? Why the fuck is Pompey killed? There's another martyr, Pompey's Hex on Kentucky. Pompey is a black interpreter for Blackfish. The Indians' last major attack was beaten off on the night of September 17th, and although some firing continued the next morning, the besiegers' camp was broken up. Daniel Boone believed that the Indians had 37 killed. There's no estimate of the wounded. So Daniel Boone, 37 people died at the siege of Boonesboro. Virginia arrived a few days after the siege was lifted. Blackfish broke up his party into small bands, inflicting more damage than the large party had done in the siege. George Roger Clark, he gets pissed. Governor Patrick Henry, he was a part of it, approved the plan of George Rogers Clark. As the leaders conferred near the town church, a French Indian raiding party returned and its members were killed or captured. 4 warriors were tomahawked and their bodies were tossed in the river. Hamilton was visibly shaken by the atrocity, as Clark had hoped he would be, but the American also wanted to demonstrate to the Indians that the British could not give them the protection that had been promised. Hamilton surrendered Vincennes on February 25th, becoming another victim of Clark's psychological warfare. In October 1779, a large band of warriors, accompanied by Simon Girty and other renegades, surprised some cargo boats going up the Ohio at a spot a few miles above the mouth of the Licking River. Captain David Rogers and most of his 70 men were killed. Holy shit. So October 1779, Simon Girty comes into Kentucky. October 1779, Simon Girty came into Kentucky. And you fucking genociders, he went ahead and killed 50 of you genociders. Surprised some cargo boats going up the Ohio a few miles above the mouth of the Licking River. Captain David Rogers and most of the 70 men he was with killed. Small parties of Indians continued to murder and pillage and steal from the genocidal invaders, but the hard winter of 1779-80 brought peace for a few months. Captain Byrd, with an army of nearly 1,000 men, including Simon Girty, Alexander McKee, and some other whites, brought some cannon through the wilderness. Ruddle Station surrendered after a few shots on June 24th. The settlers were promised that they would be taken to Detroit as British prisoners, but Byrd could not control the Indians. A number of prisoners were killed and a great deal of property was destroyed.